Tonight with two ingenious solutions to Florida's ongoing battles with wild reptiles. And for that, we take you to opposite ends of the technology spectrum. First, high-tech solution. Florida is deploying robotic rabbits to help capture invasive Burmese pythons.
Deep inside the Florida Everglades, in the dead of night, a tiny robotic rabbit sat completely still in the tall, wet grass. Its mechanical body was warmed to 98 degrees. Its scent smelled like real flesh and blood. Seconds later, a 20-foot monster exploded from the dark water, wrapping around the fake animal with bone-crushing power. But what the cameras inside that robot recorded next left top scientists completely speechless. For decades, the Florida Everglades was known as one of the most beautiful and peaceful wild places in America. Millions of acres of slow-moving water and tall sawgrass were alive with life. You could hear deer splashing through the shallow rivers, otters playing in the sunlight, and native marsh rabbits darting through the brush. It was a place of balance where nature thrived for thousands of years. But slowly, that lively world began to die. Locals who grew up near the swamp were the first to feel that something was wrong. The morning bird songs grew fainter each year. The small tracks in the mud disappeared. Soon, over 90% of the small mammals in the region were gone without a trace. The swamp was falling into a terrifying, unnatural silence. If you walked into a wild forest and suddenly realized every animal had vanished, would you stay to find out why? Let us know in the comments below. The people living nearby had no idea that a predator from halfway across the world had invaded their waters. A creature that could grow longer than a pickup truck, swallow a deer whole, and vanish into the mud like a ghost. Scientists rushed to the wetlands to fight back. But that was only the beginning. Every single trick they tried failed miserably, pushing them toward an experiment so strange that almost nobody believed it was real. To understand how this nightmare started, you have to look back to the 1980s. During that time, exotic pets became wildly popular across America. Pet stores were filled with baby Burmese pythons from Southeast Asia. When they were small, they looked completely harmless. They could curl up peacefully in the palm of a child's hand, and families bought them without thinking twice. What these owners did not realize was that a cute little baby python does not stay small for long. Within just a few years, those tiny snakes grew into 15-foot giants weighing over 100 pounds. They were stronger than their owners and dangerous to handle. Many people panicked. Instead of taking them to animal shelters, some owners drove quietly to the edge of the Everglades late at night and dumped them into the dark water. Then everything went completely wrong. In August of 1992, Hurricane Andrew slammed into South Florida with devastating power. It was one of the most destructive storms in American history. The winds tore roofs off houses and crushed entire buildings, including several private exotic reptile breeding facilities. In just a few chaotic hours, hundreds of powerful pythons escaped into the wild and vanished into the flooded wetlands. What nobody expected was just how fast they would conquer the swamp. The Everglades was not just a new home for the snakes. It was absolute paradise. The water was warm, the sawgrass was endless, and there was plenty of easy food everywhere. The local birds, rabbits, and deer had never seen a giant snake before. They did not know how to run, hide, or protect themselves. To make matters worse, a single female python can lay up to 100 eggs in a single season. With almost no natural enemies to stop them, their numbers exploded. What started as a few escaped pets quickly turned into an untraceable army of tens of thousands of giant predators. And then the nightmare spilled out of the wild. Families living on the edges of the swamp started waking up to terrifying sights. Giant snakes were spotted crossing busy roads, sliding through backyard swimming pools, and coiling underneath parked cars. People were afraid to let their pets and small children play outside after dark. The state of Florida knew they had to act immediately before the entire ecosystem was destroyed forever. But the next decision changed everything, leading into a battle that nobody was truly prepared to fight. Florida decided to declare an all-out war against the giant snakes. State officials created the famous Python Challenge, offering big cash prizes to anyone brave enough to hunt them down. Soon, thousands of hunters from across the world traveled to South Florida with boots, lights, and catching hooks. Videos of massive snakes being dragged out of the muddy water went viral online, and for a short time, people believed the problem was being solved. But there was a hidden problem. The Florida Everglades covers more than 1.5 million acres of dense sawgrass and treacherous swamp. For every single python a hunter pulled out of the mud, dozens more were hiding just inches away under the water. The snakes have natural camouflage patterns that make them look identical to dead leaves and muddy logs. Even the most experienced hunters walked right past 20-foot monsters without ever seeing them. Scientists realized that human eyes were simply not good enough, so they brought in an elite team of four-legged detectives. They trained two special scent tracking dogs named Truman, a black Labrador, and Eleanor, a golden retriever. These dogs were trained to catch the faint smell of python skin in the hot, humid air. When the dogs caught a scent, they would bark and lead human handlers straight into the brush. What happened next shocked everyone. While Truman and Eleanor were incredibly brave, the swamp was simply too dangerous for them. Massive alligators hid in the dark water, sharp sawgrass tore at their paws, and thick mud could trap a dog in seconds. Handlers could only let the dogs search near dry roads and safe trails. The vast majority of the dangerous swamp remained completely untouched. Desperate for another answer, researchers tried an undercover trick called scout snakes. They caught male pythons, surgically placed radio trackers inside their bodies, and released them back into the wild. The idea was simple. The male snakes would search through the swamp to find huge breeding females. Yet again, things did not go as planned. Some male snakes moved into deep, remote territories where radio signals could not reach. Others barely moved at all. Even high-tech thermal drones failed because the baking Florida sun made every rock, tree, and patch of mud glow with heat on infrared screens. The snakes were winning on every front. The state had spent millions of dollars on hunters, dogs, trackers, and drones, but the python population kept growing faster than ever. Wildlife experts knew they were running out of time. If they could not find a way to outsmart these predators inside their own territory, the Everglades would be lost forever. That was when a small team of engineers came up with an idea so unbelievable that almost everyone the idea started when biologists noticed something truly fascinating about the snakes. Even though native marsh rabbits had almost completely vanished from the Everglades, the pythons still remembered them. In fact, laboratory tests showed that Burmese pythons had an unusually powerful biological craving for the scent of marsh rabbits over almost any other food in the swamp. At first, researchers tried using live rabbits inside protective cages to draw the giant snakes out of hiding. But animal welfare groups were furious, and the scientists quickly realized that risking the lives of endangered animals was the wrong path. So they asked a question that sounded completely crazy. What if they could build a machine that looks, smells, moves, and feels like a living, breathing marsh rabbit? The South Florida Water Management District teamed up with brilliant robotic engineers from the University of Florida to attempt something that had never been done before in wildlife history. When other scientists first heard about the plan, many of them openly laughed. Critics said it was a total waste of money and called it a silly cartoon trick that could never fool a wild monster. But the engineers knew something the critics did not. Pythons do not hunt using simple vision alone. They are ancient, cold-blooded ambush predators that rely on four distinct senses: eyesight, chemical scent, ground vibration, and radiant body heat. If the engineers could perfectly match all four natural signals, they believed they could trigger a snake's instinct to strike. The team spent months perfecting the tiny mechanical creatures. They built heated internal cores that kept the robot at the exact 98-degree body temperature of a living mammal. They installed soft, flexible limbs powered by tiny electric motors that made the robot twitch nervously in the grass. They even coated the artificial fur with concentrated marsh rabbit scent pads and hid miniature microcameras and GPS trackers deep inside the skull. Before we reveal what happened when they placed the first robotic rabbit into the pitch-black swamp, subscribe because stories like this prove that real science is often stranger than fiction. The engineers knew they only had one chance to prove their doubters wrong. On a muggy evening just before sunset, the team loaded the delicate mechanical bunnies onto an airboat and raced deep into known python territory. They set the first robot in the thick sawgrass, retreated to a safe distance, and turned on their monitors. Nobody expected what came next. Thought they had lost their minds. The researchers sat quietly in their airboat, staring at glowing computer screens in the dark. 4 hours, nothing moved. The Florida swamp was still and heavy with silence. Some team members started to worry that the entire experiment had been a massive mistake and that wild pythons were too clever to fall for a bundle of circuits and fake fur. Then, The tiny motion sensors on the monitor flashed red. Through the night vision camera, the scientists watched the sawgrass slowly part. A massive head, wider than a human hand, glided smoothly into the clearing. It was a giant Burmese python, nearly 16 feet long. Its dark tongue flicked in and out, testing the warm air and tasting the rabbit scent drifting across the mud. The robotic rabbit twitched its mechanical leg once, just like a nervous wild animal. What happened next was completely violent and breathtaking. In less than a tenth of a second, the snake struck. It hit the fake rabbit with immense speed, slamming its jaws onto the decoy and throwing thick muscular coils around the tiny machine. The snake squeezed with terrifying strength, trying to crush the breath out of what it thought was a fresh meal. Most of us will never have to face a giant predator in the dark. But many of us know what it feels like when everyone doubts your ideas, and you have to take a massive risk just to prove what you are capable of. The researchers held their breath, praying their delicate invention would survive the attack. The robot held together perfectly. Inside its synthetic skull, the miniature camera kept recording every single millisecond of the strike. It captured the exact angle the python used to attack, the speed of its lunging body, and the way its eyes tracked heat in total darkness. When the snake finally realized the cold metal and plastic were not real food, it slowly let go and slithered away into the thick black mud. But the camera did not stop. It tracked the snake's exact escape route, showing the secret tunnel of crushed grass it used to disappear into the water. Nobody in wildlife history had ever gathered this level of clear, close-up data on wild python hunting behavior. The team was so excited by the breakthrough that they immediately decided to deploy dozens more robotic decoys across the swamp. But nature was not about to make things easy. The swamp was getting ready to fight back in ways the engineers never saw coming. Encouraged by their early success, the team built and deployed more than 40 robotic rabbits deep inside the most dangerous corners of the Everglades. They placed them on remote tree islands, along quiet waterways, and deep within the endless sawgrass. Every single decoy was equipped with night vision lenses, GPS locators, and wireless data transmitters. The swamp looked like a high-tech battleground, but keeping fragile machines alive in the wild turned out to be an absolute nightmare. The Everglades is not just wet, it is brutally harsh. Daily temperatures routinely soared past 100 degrees with crushing humidity that ruined delicate electronics. Tiny motors jammed when thick mud seeped into their joints. Heated internal cores quickly drained power supplies, causing batteries that were supposed to last for days to die in just a few short hours. Then the local wildlife decided to join the fight. Pythons were not the only hungry predators prowling through the dark wetlands. Huge native alligators discovered the warm, twitching decoys and crushed them into pieces with their powerful jaws. One robotic rabbit completely vanished from the map, only for its GPS signal to beep days later from deep inside an active alligator nest miles away. Curious raccoons and large birds tore at the synthetic fur and pulled out sensitive wiring, ruining weeks of hard engineering work. To make matters even more complicated, some pythons proved to be surprisingly smart. Several large snakes approached the robotic rabbits, flicked their tongues a few times, and simply turned around and slithered away without striking. It seemed the older, wiser predators could tell something was not quite right about the mechanical smell or the unnatural motion. The human researchers were exhausted. They had to wade chest-deep through murky, dangerous water carrying heavy equipment while dodging swarms of biting mosquitoes, venomous snakes, and territorial alligators. Every time a storm rolled in, sudden flash floods washed expensive decoys away into deep canals. Public critics started speaking out again, calling the project a total waste of taxpayer dollars and pointing out the broken machines scattered across the mud. The scientists were pushed to their absolute limits. They had to redesign the robots on the fly, adding heavy waterproof coatings, stronger armor, and smarter sensors to keep the project from collapsing completely. Just when it felt like the swamp had won the battle, the surviving robots began sending back a stream of new data. What the computers uncovered hidden inside those digital files changed the entire war forever, as dozens of robotic rabbits sent back thousands of hours of high-definition video and sensor logs. The scientists fed the massive mountain of information into advanced machine learning computers. For years, humans assumed that pythons were just randomly wandering through millions of acres of wetlands. The real story was something totally different. The artificial intelligence began connecting tiny data points that no human eye had ever noticed before. The computer screens revealed that the giant snakes were not wandering blindly at all. They were actually using specific, invisible highways through the thick sawgrass and hidden waterways. These secret routes connected their favorite hunting spots, sunbathing rocks, and hidden underground resting dens. For the very first time since the invasion began, scientists were no longer guessing where the predators might be. They could look at a digital map and accurately predict the exact time and path a giant snake would use to travel across the swamp. The data also solved one of the biggest mysteries that had haunted wildlife experts for decades, where the giant females were laying their eggs. By tracking how male pythons behaved near the decoys during the mating season, the computer algorithms pointed researchers straight toward massive, hidden nests buried deep underneath thick layers of dead vegetation. These breeding spots had been completely invisible to human search teams on foot. Now, wildlife management teams could walk straight into the brush and remove dozens of egg clutches containing thousands of unhatched baby pythons before they ever had a chance to enter the ecosystem. The cameras also captured shocking interactions between pythons and other native predators. The footage proved that large pythons actively avoided areas with high alligator activity, taking long detours through shallow water to stay safe from the massive reptiles. Armed with this brand-new digital playbook, Florida changed its entire hunting strategy. Instead of sending hundreds of tired volunteers to wander aimlessly through millions of acres of water, professional capture teams were sent directly to the exact GPS coordinates where the algorithm predicted snakes would appear. Capture rates jumped dramatically, and teams started removing more breeding adults in a single month than they used to catch in an entire year. The little robotic rabbits had done the impossible. They turned the tide of a losing battle and gave humans their first real advantage in over 30 years of fighting. Yet, as the sun set over the vast green wetlands, scientists knew that winning a few battles was not the same thing as winning the war. The success of the robotic rabbits proved that human creativity and modern technology could fight back against an ecological disaster. In areas where researchers cleared out hidden nests and mapped the secret snake highways, small glimpses of hope began to appear. Biologists started spotting the occasional native marsh rabbit darting through the brush again, and birdsong slowly returned to sections of the swamp that had been dead quiet for over 2 decades. That was only a small victory in a massive war. The harsh reality is that the Florida Everglades is still home to tens of thousands of Burmese pythons. A single female snake can still hide deep in the untamed wilderness and hatch dozens of hungry predators in a single summer. Wildlife experts openly admit that completely wiping out every giant python from millions of acres of wild wetlands may be nearly impossible. Yet, giving up is no longer an option. The real lesson behind this bizarre experiment goes much deeper than just catching giant snakes with mechanical toys. It serves as a powerful, chilling reminder of what happens when humans carelessly interfere with nature. A few unwanted exotic pets dumped into the wild decades ago transformed into an unstoppable environmental nightmare, one that required cutting-edge robotics, machine learning, and millions of dollars just to slow down. The war for the Florida Everglades is still happening right now, one dark night at a time. Every mechanical decoy placed in the mud, every hidden nest discovered before it hatches, and every giant predator pulled from the water brings the ancient swamp one step closer to healing. It proves that even when a crisis feels too massive to solve, courage and innovation can give nature a second chance to survive. The battle against the Florida python invasion is one of the strangest wildlife stories in modern history. But this was not the only unbelievable mystery hidden deep in the American wild. The next story on your screen reveals an even more shocking predator mystery that experts are still desperately trying to explain.